Okay, so hello and welcome back to another Unity tutorial. In this one we're going to be creating, starting to create the item and inventory system for this series that people have been asking for quite a while. We're going to start off by creating an item class and having a list that stores the item class, which is effectively an inventory in itself. And then we'll move on to next video where we do, displaying the items on the screen, and then we'll go on to, moving them around the inventory and dropping them, and then everything else, we'll just keep adding the new features of the inventory as we go along, just keep building up upon it until we have a better inventory system. And then we could merge this in with other things like, vendor inventories, like buying and selling. Or just keep building upon it. And that's also while I'm working on my game, and, I'll be thinking of improvements to it as we go along. There's nothing to say that if we do something in not the most efficient way in an earlier tutorial, we can't, we could just then improve it in the later ones. But for this one, it's going to be simple, creating an item class. We need 3 scripts: item, inventory slot, and inventory. Obviously, they're empty. I've just made them, ready. And all I have in the scene basically is a button that has, it doesn't actually have any method on it yet, but it will have. So just make yourself a button or some way of us basically adding an item. For the sake of this video, we might not even use the button, but, if you're following along with this series from the start, then you'll want to just follow along like this. So we're going to need to, tell Unity what is an item, because we're going to be storing items. They don't know what an item is. So we're going to be using scriptable objects like in my past few videos. So if you remember, we have to change it from deriving from mono behavior to that now derived from scriptable object. And the difference is mono behavior is what you derive from if you're using a script on an object in the actual scene, and you'll be able to make an update function which will get run every frame. And it's all for simulating an object's code in the scene, but scriptable objects don't exist in the scene. They exist in the actual files of the game. They're like asset files, and they can store data, and you read from them and you write to them. And if you change them in the editor, they will save, unlike normal changes in the editor. Though if you change them when you've built the game and you're playing it externally, it won't save. That's why if you have game save you on a date, oh, I messed my sentence up there. If you have game data you want to save, you save it to text files or in JSON format and so on, and then you load that back up when you press play. But anyway, we're going to get into that's further down the line. Don't worry about that. So for now, what do we want to store for an item? Well, we want to store whatever you want. There's some basic things you're going to store, then the rest is up to you. So every item is going to have a name. So public string item name is equal to, oh whoops, I just got rid of the squiggly bracket. So item name, and we're going to set it equal to new item, and items will probably have a description as well. So item description equals can't type new description, like so. And we'll also have some other fields, like we'll have an integer for price. It's public int item. Let's put price equals 0 by default. I don't know. And we'll have a public. We'll create our own enum. So I'll have. You should know what enums are already. They're kind of like in terms of the editor, they're a drop-down box, and you choose one of the values, and it has to be one of them. And it's kind of like a way that you treat different kinds of the same thing. So we're gonna have loads of items, but you might have a different kinds of items. Obviously, one way of doing this is having other scripts which derive from item, but with something simple like this, it's easier to do an enum. So you can just store like the type of item. So we're gonna say we can have a default type. We can have a consumable type. We can have a weapon type, and ammunition. So there you go. These are the different possible types an item can be. And we'll say by default the type of item. We're going to make the variable called type but lowercase. We're going to set that equal to default. Now you would actually have to do type.default because you're referring to the enum. It's already going to be default anyway, but I like to just have it hard coded, like this is what it equals. Same with this. You could just put public int price, but price equals 0, and I just like it like this. It makes no difference really, unless you want it to start as a particular value. But you might want it doesn't matter because every time you create an item instance, you're going to set all this stuff manually anyway in the editor. So let's say this is all we want to store on an item. Now we want to be able to actually create this item in the in your project. You need like a folder to store all items, and you create instances of them later. But as you see, these are character spell key bindings. That's from my other videos. If you've watched them, then you should know the next thing to do is to make it appear in the asset menu. So create asset menu, and it takes in a file name and a menu name. So we'll say file name is equal to, whoops, already it's equals, new item. So when you create a new item, it's just called new item by default, makes sense. And we'll need a menu name. Whoops, menu name. I can't type. And that's equal to, then we kind of have like a file path for it from the asset menu. So we're going to say, we'll make a folder called inventory so that we can put other things, that's scriptable objects if we have any. So inventory slash item, like so. So if we save that, that's this script done with basically. I don't think there's a reason we'll have to come back to it. So just give it a second. Now if we go to right click and create inventory, you'll see we've got an item in the drop down. And here's our new item, that's what the name we gave it, new item. And here's its default stuff. So we're going to say, basic sword. So we'll just give it some information. So it's, called basic sword. And the description is, a pointy thing for stabbing peoples. That's not very good English, don't use that, please. I just did that on purpose, but the price, it's going to be worth 35 gold pieces, I don't know, whatever you want, and it's of type weapon. Now we're going to create let's go find it. Let's create another kind of item. We'll have a, health potion. We'll have like, minor health potion. Minor health potion. And it's, heals the player for 15 HP. And the price of the potion will be a lot less, it'll be like 10 gold. And it's a consumable. So there we go, we have our different items like this. Now we'll just make a folder called items. Whoops. And then we'll put the items into here. So, I spelled that right, didn't I? Yeah, items. Okay, good. Now we're going to need to store those items somewhere. So, what are we going to do? We're going to write our inventory slot and inventory script. In all reality, we're not really going to use the inventory slot thing this video. That's more for when we have the UI on screen, but I'll cover it at the end of this video. So, what do we want an inventory to do? Well, what in essence does an inventory do? It sits on something in the scene, and it holds your inventory. It holds an item. It holds all your items. So, we'll need a list, because multiple of the same thing, you need lists. So, public. Now, we have choices. We can use list, or we can use array. Now, the difference is, lists can change in size, and arrays can't. Now, your inventory, unless you are having a dynamically sized inventory, which you, even if you do, this is still the best way to do it, I think. I'm going to have a set size of 20 for the inventory, so I'm going to use an array, and it helps because it means that all 20 slots will be there all the time. The problem is if you remove items from an array, from a list, like a list of type item, if you remove values from a list, then the actual size of the inventory list will shrink, which will mean that let's say for example you have 20 items and you remove the 20th item, you get rid of it, index 19. Then the last slot will not exist anymore because there's nothing there. So you want it to always exist. So we'll use this kind. So we'll call it like item list, or like items. I'm trying to think of a better naming way for this. Yeah, let's call it item list. And you just do it like that. Well, actually, no, you don't, because you actually put the type first. So it's an item list called item list. There we go. Item array called item list. I could call it item array, but I'm calling it list not because the coding term list, just because it's a list of your items. Yeah, sorry. Okay, so now that we've got that, we'll just set it equal. Well, we don't even need to set it equal, just end it. And it's size 20, so we'll put 20 inside there. So now if we go back to Unity and let it compile, this inventory script, all it does currently is store 20 items. So if we go to inventory handler and we add our inventory script, like so, as you see, oh, we don't see. Did we not make it public? Oh, it's because, damn it. How do you make it set size 20? Equals new item list 20. There's no errors there. I think I did it right. That's it's a little bit different when you're using arrays to lists. Like the syntaxing is slightly different, but yep, that worked. So we have now, look, here we go, 20. We can't change the size. Well, we can, but we shouldn't. It doesn't automatically change is the main point, whereas lists will always change automatically and dynamically. So now we can store 20 items. Obviously, certain slots are empty right now. Well, they're all empty right now. We'll have ways of adding items and removing them, but for now, we'll just drag them in. So we'll say, this slot has a basic sword in, and this slot has a minor health potion in. So as you see, we can basically go through our inventory, and we can loop at points and basically say like, you know, what's at this slot? We have this basic sword. What's it called? What's it? Blah blah blah. We get all the data on it. So it's storing a list of our items. Now we could make a quick function for adding an item. So this isn't going to be our final function, but we'll just add it quickly. So we'll say, how about this? So I have a public void add item, public void add item, and we'll just say it passes in an item type. So this is the parameter. We've taken an item. We'll literally just say for int I equals 0, I is less than item list dot count. Oh, sorry, dot length. I plus plus. So it's just a normal for loop for the length of the inventory. Then we'll say if item list I, if it's equal to null. So if there's nothing in the current slot that we're checking, we'll say item list dot add or dot, no, sorry, we'll say like item list I, so whichever slot we're currently on, is now equal to the item we're taking in. Okay, so we're going to loop through all of the slots, and as soon as we find an empty one, we're going to set it equal to the item that we're trying to add. Now, if I left it like this, it would find the first empty slot, and then it would add it to every slot after that, or every one that's blank. We want to, as soon as we've done it, we want to return. We don't want to do it anymore. So obviously return will end the function, so this won't carry on running anymore. And that's simply it, to be honest. This isn't the way we're going to finally like have it, but it'll work. So let's say, for example, I set these to none. And if I go to the button I made, and I'll just add, item, we're going to add a function from this object, and it's called add item, and it takes in an item. So we'll say, yeah, when we press this button, we want to add a basic sword to our inventory. Okay. So we're going to add a basic sword to the inventory. Let's click on our inventory handler. So as you see, here's our button. When we click add, it adds it. Now, if I click add again, it's going to say, no, this slot isn't empty anymore, so we're going to add it to that one. So as you see, we keep adding items. And if I went here and I changed, you know, now we're adding a minor health potion, and then I go back and click the item, the thing, we've got minor health potions. And let's say I say, nah, this slot is empty now because we've removed the item, and I want to add another one. It adds it into that slot. Now, we're going to get an error when it's full. Well, actually, no, sorry, we don't get an error, it just doesn't do it. So, but in the game, what would actually happen if you didn't have a handler for this is, let's say you got an full inventory and you pick up a really good weapon. It'll loop through, it'll pick up the weapon, it'll like despawn it, and then you'll be done. You've lost your item because there's no room for it. So you want to have something saying, hold on a second, if there's no space, we actually need to like tell them, no, don't get rid of the item, we haven't actually picked it up. Well, we want to have a, basically all we need to do is make this a public boolean, and we return true if we do add it, and then we, if we actually get out of this for loop, it means that there's no spaces left, so it's returned false. Okay, now that's just kind of the basic setup for this. Add item is not going to be added as a button in the actual inspector. It's going to be when you drag something into your inventory or pick something up in the game. But for now, it's just a button that works. And as you see, so remember, if we add an item here, and even though it's a scriptable object, it won't get saved because we're not changing a scriptable object, we're changing a script, normal mono behavior. anything you change in here will stay permanent even if you do it in play mode, which is an advantage in some cases. In a lot of cases it's an advantage, but there are some where it's not a disadvantage, but you have to cater for it and work around it. But don't worry, I'll be covering that in the upcoming videos. So that's basically this video, to be honest. You've got yourself a list of items you can add to the list, and if it's full it won't add, basically. So that's already the groundwork done, and I'll do another video tomorrow, and I think for the next few days or maybe a week or so I'll just keep doing this series. As for the Discord bot tutorials, I honestly don't think there's much point continuing the series, because it's one of those things where there's not really anything else to teach. It's all up to you to come up with your own commands and just make them. That's if you hear from my other videos as well, because if you want to go make a command that does something, you can just use the documentation and quite literally make it easily. Yeah, it's kind of the same in Unity, but it's also not, because there's so many different mechanics from so many different games that you might want to know how to make, and using the Unity engine. But there's nothing really to learn about the Discord.js library that isn't already on the documentation. So feel free to join the server and ask questions. But I don't really think I'll do any more videos unless there's something in particular that I need to make a video on. But yeah, feel free to just keep working on your own. I've given enough information in the Discord bot videos for people to actually make their own Discord bots, which I've seen a lot of people make the Discord bots and thank me, saying couldn't get this to work earlier, now it works. And because of the amount of people that have watched that video, hundreds of Discord bots are probably only possible because they watch the videos, which is quite nice to think about. But it's also spawned a lot of people that try and get it to run and it doesn't work, and then they start crying that it's not working, and I have to answer the same question from hundreds of people. But it's worth it. So I'm just going to end the video by saying, if you haven't already, obviously subscribe to the channel, stay tuned for the upcoming videos over the next week or so. It'd mean a lot if you join the Discord server too, take part in that and everything. I guess the last thing to say is just, thanks for being part of the community anyway. It's given me something to do, it's keeping me busy, and it's quite a lot to talk about, and just, it gives me something to do, so it's really nice. But yeah, also keep that in mind. There's a lot of people in the Discord server and the YouTube comments, so it's impossible to reply to everyone. Especially, I can't reply to everyone right away when they ask. I will get around to whatever I can, but I still have stuff to do myself, like school and life. But this is quite a big part of my life now, doing tutorials, helping the Discord server, coding this, that, the other. It's helping me prepare a lot for when I go to university and do coding, hopefully, do computer science. That is my goal. So this is helping a lot, giving me a lot to write about and talk about past experiences. So yeah, thanks for just being a part of it anyway. I don't want to talk for 5 minutes and let this drag on, so I want to keep the upload time down if possible. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. There's not much more I'll say, I've already covered it all, so thanks for watching and goodbye.